is that Beavis and Butthead ended up being one of those cartoon shows where kids accidentally watched the show and took in part of reenacting one of their bad deeds in a certain episode. And speaking of dangerous men in America, I'm surprised Donald Trump hasn't made this list. Anyways, Beavis and Butthead weren't just a cartoon duo. In fact, they were more of a generation icon for Generation X. Yeah, I said that twice. Beavis and Butthead weren't just your normal everyday adult cartoon show. It was basically a show filled with a lot of violence and degeneracy. Created by Mike Judge and started premiering in 1993 on MTV, but later in the years, Beavis and Butthead ended up becoming a predecessor towards King of the Hill, Mike's other show that teaches about life lessons, family values, and other priority things compared to Beavis and Butthead. Beavis and Butthead was less wholesome and more of a dangerous show for minors to watch. And when I mean minors, I mean little kids. It seems that to millions of teenagers, this show has not just been a bad impression for those who don't know any better or have any sense of morality, but unfortunately, this would happen to one certain individual that happened to love the show so much that they ended up participating in the same acts as Beavis and Butthead. What I mean by that is, hey guys, well, okay, I guess you guys. Anyways, you guys might be wondering why am I wearing this cap. I actually took some time off. If you got the message that I had a loose tooth, I believe. Yeah, it was a whole thing. I had to pay for it and everything. I had to slowly, get into speaking patterns, speech patterns, and all that. But I'm back. Anyways, let's get to the story though. Let's get into that. It was the fall of 1993, Moraine, Ohio, for Darcy Burke. Life was a blur of 12-hour shifts sorting tax papers to provide for her two children, 5-year-old Austin and 2-year-old Jessica. But on October 6th, that life went up into smoke. In less than 12 minutes, a mobile home was reduced to ashes. Darcy, her boyfriend, and Austin escaped through the window. Jessica did not. When the fire chief asked 5-year-old Austin how the fire started, his answer did not just break a mother's heart, it ignited a national firestorm. He had been playing with a cigarette lighter, mimicking his favorite cartoon, Beavis and Butthead. Now, Darcy didn't blame her son, and for obvious reasons, because he's 5 and of course his mind is impressionable, so anything he sees on television he's probably gonna reenact it at some point. It's a very common psychological thing when you're going into adolescence. It's very common. So Darcy ended up blaming the television that casted Beavis and Butthead, and in fact the son himself, he would actually kept repeating the same phrase over and over again from Beavis, fire, fire, like you said, fire, fire. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, the fallout was just immediate. This wasn't just local tragedy. It became the focal point of a national debate on whether television was poisoning the minds of American children, and that the pressure also was intense, and it forced a sea-changing broadcasting from MTV in general. So basically, they wanted to hold these adult cartoons accountable, even though they have discretion paragraphs on their before they even show the show. They have the caption that shows it's not for kids, it's MA, for mature audiences only. They also have a TV guide where they give to you back in the 90s where they showed you, yeah, this isn't for your kid. If you ever see these captions on your television screens during those analog days, you can't show this to your kid, and they already have that. So I just don't understand why adults won't just tune into Disney Channel. It was at its peak back then. Doug was back in those days. I mean, what were you going to be missing? I mean, may I go on? There was the DuckTales that was on as well, like the Goof Troop, the Goofy movie, but you got to settle in for an MTV. I don't know who was in charge of this whole entire thing, but it sounds like terrible parental supervision. I'm not trying to critique here, but still, like, Beavis and Butthead, really? Of all shows? Just, I don't understand. So yeah, this led into Consumer Product Safety Commission to mandate child-resistant lighters. And from there, decades later, the MTV revived the show in 2011. Beavis and Butthead ended up being brought back into MTV during that time period. And at the end of the day, Darcy, well, rather she did gain any type of justice from this situation is up to debate. And at the end of the day, this is a common case of nature versus nurture, where you don't have to have your kids always being the antagonist in this situation. But however, it's us as adults who want to who want to guide these kids into understanding right from wrong. That's where we need to start making a change and just go from there. We don't need to change how television is. Television can be the same as it always was, but unfortunately, when it comes to those who are impressionable and are not being guided by the right suitors, right, the right parents, obviously there's going to be a backlash. There's going to be consequences. In fact, experts like Eugene Berzin of Harvard Medical School argue the reality is more nuanced. While thousands of studies show a correlation between media and behavior, Berzin notes that only small margin, about 5% to 9% of children, are actually vulnerable enough to mimic what they see on television. For the vast majority, a cartoon is just a cartoon. The question isn't just about content, it's about who is holding the remote. So it's pretty much just common sense in what I just told you guys. So anyways, yeah, this case was crazy. And at the end of the day, I don't feel like Mike Judge should feel any type of any type of guilt. I mean, he could hold some type of guilt. But at the end of the day, I understand a kid ended up losing their lives, right? And their lives, right? And we can't do anything about it. Like, it happened. The only thing we can do is just be better parents at the end of the day. And unfortunately, this would try to change television the way it is. I mean, there were some type of restraints on what to show in children's shows nowadays, but was it for the greater good? I don't believe so. I mean, this is like a 1 in a million chances that this thing would actually happen in real life. I mean, there are other cases out there in the world. The world is huge, but we can't just change our ways of watching television because of one person. It just doesn't make any sense. And if I could also show you some more data, media violence statistics in 90s context, the annual acts of violence viewed by kids was at 10,000. Is at like roughly 10,000. And the percentage of shows containing violence was 61%, and the percentage of at-risk children for mimicry was around 5% to 9%. So that's like small. That's like a good percentage of a certain minority that would be able to do this. So they're in the minority. The people who are impressionable towards like television, they're in the minority here. Anyways, besides that, yeah, that was the tale. But for Darcy, every October 6th, she releases a pink balloon and does a silent protest against the media, and how and she wants to continue like sharing the word about censorship on television. And yeah, I understand to a certain point. At the end of the day, it's the network's decision to do. I mean, of course, there were other cases where human life were taken away because of television, because of television shows out there. But if I had to look into this and say, yeah, should all this just become heavily censored and just become like a kid show level of what they can show and what they can't show, I'm gonna go ahead and say no, and it's for a good reason. Anyways, besides that, that was the story of the fire incident that happened in 1993 in October 6th to be exact. And rest in peace to I forgot her name. Wow, Jessica, who was lost in the flames back in that time period. I hope the family has finally found peace for once, and hopefully that the television shows that are out there being gruesome won't bother them and it won't affect them how they live their lives. So anyways, yeah, besides that, I hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you guys later.